Welcome to Rice TVX and the latest episode of the Rice Crypto Show. On today's Rice Report, we are going to be talking about the fourth turning. I've been talking about it in previous videos. Going to do my best to explain and summarize this awesome book. Give me a 5x5 if you can hear me, and we're going to get started here momentarily. You're watching the replay. Fast forward to about the 4-minute, 20-second mark. All right, on today's show, we're going to be talking about this book, The Fourth Turning by William Strauss and Neil Howe. One of the authors has passed away. That is William Strauss has passed away, but Neil Howe is still alive. He actually has a new book coming out. We're going to be summarizing and explaining this book the best I can on today's show. Before we begin, a few quick messages from the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to my mailing list over at Rice TVX, as well as both my YouTube channels here on Rice TVX, as well as Rice Against the Grain. Before we get into it, take time to visit my website at ricetvx.com. There you can sign up for my mailing list so you can stay up to date on all things Rice. Once you've signed up for my mailing list, you will find links for my channels and socials towards the top of the website. Make sure you are subscribed to both of my YouTube channels, Rice Against the Grain and Rice TVX. If you want to support my work directly, as well as get early access, exclusive content for both channels, plus more, join my Patreon. Also, make sure you take time to smash that like button because it's supposed to help with the YouTube algorithm flow. It's supposed to help bring more people to the video and the channel. So if you have not, hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. A few quick messages from the sponsors of Rice TVX who make it possible for me to do this full time. Always got to shout out the sponsors, and you can find information in every video description for Monarch Wallet and Pre-Search, the decentralized search engine. Oh, and look at that. We're right here about the 420 mark. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's live stream. We're going to be talking about the fourth turning. So here is the book, The Fourth Turning. Okay, just so you see this on screen, I will have a link so you can order the book yourself. And I will have links down below for everything we talk about on today's show. But the book in a nutshell, and this comes from a book summary website, great website that I'm going to be sharing on today's video. In The Fourth Turning, Neil Howe and William Strauss argue that history follows a clear and predictable cycle. Each cycle lasts around a lifetime and consists of 4 seasons or turnings, each marked by a profound shift in the national mood and culture. This life cycle of 4 seasons is made inevitable by 4 generational archetypes and their order, which they argue has recurred throughout modernity. The book was written in 1997. I will stress the book was written in 1997, at which point the author suggested that we were approaching the fourth turning, a life-changing period of crisis that marks every saeculum. Thank you for tuning in for today's video. I want to go ahead and see who's joined us in the live chat. I appreciate everybody for being here today. We have Quick Mithril in the house. Neil McCoy Ward has been speaking on this topic a bit lately too. Looking forward to hearing Rice's insights. A lot of people have been talking about the fourth turning because theoretically we are in a fourth turning, which I'll get into that. One of the best videos and interviews that you could see would be one, check out George Gammon. He did, I believe, 2 interviews with Neil Howe regarding the fourth turning. Also, Tony Robbins had Neil Howe on. I believe they did a presentation in Hawaii. A lot of smart individuals are aware of this book, have read this book, and are paying attention because of what the book says. Emily Hart, thank you for tuning in. Johnny Midas, Forrest Jackson, Pathfinder, what is going on, my friend? Bitcoin Cash TV, thanks for supporting the channel and thanks for the retweets, my friend. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you, Emily. I greatly appreciate you saying that. The beginning of a new time is now. A1, it's good to see you in the house. Bad Main Light, how about the fourth turning before? Heard about the fourth turning before? We're going to be talking about it today. So the first thing that I'm going to share is a video. I took a few clips. This video comes directly from an interview with Neil Howe, and it's a little bit of an explanation from one of the authors. Again, William Strauss has passed away, but Neil Howe is still alive, and he does have a new book getting ready to come out. This is about a 4-minute clip, basic explanation of what it is, and then we're going to get into the book, the summary, and some more information.
But types of generations, what we later call archetypes, tend to recur in the same order historically.
So it's almost like a curve.
Well, it's a wave when you look at their impact on history.
Right.
It's a wave. But the actual generations, for instance, a generation that, sort of a heroic history-making, changing generation, that takes the country through great wars and founds all kinds of new institutions. Typically is followed by a rather timid, risk-averse generation. They were the children during the war. They're careful not to upset, everything that was just created. Everyone just lost all these lives on their behalf. Woo,
Right.
And a good example of that would be the GI generation, generation went through World War II, and the so-called silent generation, who were the kids of World War II and the Great Depression. And they were famous for, I don't want anything to go on my permanent record,
Right.
And they were very cautious. They were very risk averse. They all dressed in 3-piece suits, in their early 20s. They played by the rules. And ultimately, they did very well economically. They got rewarded by the rules. This is a generation that's today in their late 70s and 80s, and they're all getting defined benefit pension plans. They're all doing really well.
Right.
And for a variety of reasons, they've done very well economically. But then you have other generations which have different locations in history and different characteristic orders. For instance, following a generation like boomers, which come of age during these periods that periodically happen in American history, these great awakenings, these great upheavals in the culture, when we reinvent art and literature and dynamics between races and ethnicities and just reinvent the culture. I mean, that's what happens during awakenings. And religion, typically too in our history. Those things happen during awakenings. And following these generations, you usually have a left alone generation. We call the nomad archetype. And this would be like Generation X. These are the left alone kids. These are the kids that no one had time for because everyone was finding themselves. You know what I mean? But Gen Xers.
By the way, as you say that, I'm thinking about Macaulay Culkin and the
there we go, Home Alone.
Right? Yes.
But what's interesting and fascinating to us is that Gen Xers is not the first of this kind of generation. The Lost generation had that same. The Gilded generation. These are all kind of bad boy generations, just by their names. Lost, Gilded, Cavalier is another one going back into the 17th century. So those are fascinating archetypes, but they come in certain characteristic orders. Now that order is connected to, and not only in American history, but we think in many other countries around the world, is connected to another fascinating pattern, which many people have noticed, particularly in American history, and that is what's often called the long cycle in politics.
Right.
The fact we have major civic crises that kind of redefine who we are as a nation, politically, institutionally, in very fundamental ways, about once every long human life.
Right.
About 80 or 90 years. I mean, you look at the War of Spanish Succession. It was probably the first great global war in European history, which happened, you know, way back around 1700, and it was the Glorious Revolution in England. But it was a huge event in the colonies. And then about a lifetime after that, you had the American Revolution. Lifetime after that, Civil War. Lifetime after that, the Great Depression, World War II. And a lifetime after that, you're here with us today.
Here we are.
You know, so here we are.
All right. Now, one thing I will say to let everybody know is that this book is not necessarily the easiest read. It's not like an exciting topic. It's a very sociological study, but it's very, very useful, good information. It's more of an academic book. It's not something that you're going to want to sit there and just like breeze through. It's a lot of information. You've got to let it digest. And also part of fourth turnings include financial issues. We see resets, we see financial turmoil, collapses, crashes. So with that being said, before we keep getting into today's video, I want to let you guys know of 2 ways that you guys can support the channel. So bear with me one moment. I'll get everything pulled up on screen. I'm a big proponent of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, but I'm also a big proponent of precious metals. So I encourage you guys to take advantage of my partnerships that I have going on with Money Metals Exchange. Now, I have 2 partnerships I'm going to be sharing. I'm going to keep it really short and brief. For those of you who might have missed it, there is a new deal that I'm doing with my partnership with Money Metals. You got to use this link, moneymetals.com/rice. It will forward you back to the Money Metals site, but it shares the information on a share sale site that shows that you clicked on it and your cookie lasts for 30 days roughly. You make any purchase using my link, moneymetals.com/rice, you could be entered to win 10 ounces of silver by making any purchase between the first and last day of the month. There will be 3 monthly winners every month. Unless something changes, I will let you know. You have until the end of the month, which is 4 more days, to get entered in for this month's drawing. Enter to win 10 ounces of silver by making any purchase using the specific link, moneymetals.com/rice. And I'm also partnered up with ITM Trading. In case you are unaware of my partnership with ITM Trading, you'll see some information scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And real quick, I'm just going to share a promotional video for ITM Trading. Most of you might be familiar with Lynette Zhang from ITM Trading. She is a good friend. She is the second person that I've interviewed on my channel once I started it back in 2018. We've developed a great relationship and we've partnered up. She's allowed for viewers and subscribers of Rice TVX and Rice Against the Grain to take advantage of a free gold and silver strategy call. I also wanted to share that I have recently partnered up with ITM Trading. So if you want to schedule a gold and silver strategy call to build your wealth shield and support Rice TVX, be sure to use my specific landing page that you see on the screen, and I will also include custom Calendly links and an 800 number that you can utilize to schedule your strategy call with the ITM Trading professionals. And again, it is a way to support Rice TVX. All right, so as an independent researcher and journalist, these are ways that you can support my channel. I don't make a great deal of money via Patreon and my YouTube channel. That's why I always have to shout out the sponsors of the channel who make it possible for me to do this full time. The channel itself is definitely shadow banned, unfortunately. So again, everything I want to be sharing on today's video is linked down below. This is Neil Howe's Twitter account. If you guys would like to get some more information about Neil Howe and follow him directly at HOWE Generation. Neil Howe, coined millennial. He's the managing director of demography of Hedgeye. He's the president of Life Courses Associates. He is the author of The Fourth Turning, Generations and Millennials Rising. The Fourth Turning, the official title, is An American Prophecy, What the Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous with Destiny. You can order it on Amazon. Also, his new book, if you look at his Twitter account, he's talking about officially available in July. Pre-orders will probably be filled in late June. For the new book, The Fourth Turning is here. So you can do a pre-order. I haven't pre-ordered it yet, but I'm getting ready to pre-order it. The visionary behind the best-selling phenomenon, The Fourth Turning, looks once again to America's past to predict our future in the startling and hopeful prophecy for our present era of civil unrest will resolve over the next 10 years and what our lives will look like once it has. So this actually comes from the Hedgeye website, and it's an article that was written by Neil Howe on August 14th, 2020. I want to go ahead and get everything up on screen right. I do appreciate everybody for taking the time to tune in. And again, if you have not smashed that like button, I would definitely encourage you to do so. And I would also encourage you to make sure you're subscribed here, as well as my other channel, Rice Against the Grain. And there are links down below, so you can subscribe to my other channel as well. But what I wanted to share from this article in particular, and again, everything's linked down below so that you can do a deeper dive yourself. There is a video here. You guys can also search for Neil Howe on YouTube. He's got lots of interviews. I would definitely encourage you, if this topic interests you and you want to learn more, check out the interviews that he's done. But I do have some more clips and things that I will be sharing. So there are 4 turnings, hence the fourth turning. And this is a cyclical thing that happens throughout history. And each turning lasts about 20 to 25 years, roughly average, and they make up a saeculum. The first turning is called a high. This is an era when institutions are strong and individualism is weak. Society is confident about where it wants to go collectively, even if those outside the majority center feel stifled by the conformity. America's most recent first turning was the post-World War II American high, beginning in 1946 and ending with the assassination of John Kennedy in 1963, a key life cycle marker for today's older Americans. The second turning is an awakening. This is an era when institutions are attacked in the name of personal and spiritual autonomy. Just when society is reaching its high tide of public progress, people suddenly tire of social discipline and want to recapture a sense of personal authenticity. Young activists and spiritualists look back at the previous high as an era of cultural poverty. America's most recent awakening was a conscious revolution, which spanned from the campus and inner city revolts of the mid-60s to the tax revolts of the early 80s. The third turning is an unraveling. The mood of this era, in many ways, the opposite of a high. Institutions are weak and distrusted, while individualism is strong and flourishing. Highs follow crisis, which teach the lesson that society must coalesce and build. Unravelings follow awakenings, which teach the lesson that society must atomize and enjoy. America's most recent unraveling was the long boom in culture wars, beginning in the early 1980s and probably ending in 2008. The era opened with triumphant morning in America individualism and drifted towards a pervasive distrust of institutions and leaders, an edgy popular culture, and the splitting of national consensus into value camps. And finally, we enter the fourth turning, which is a crisis. This is an era in which America's institutional life is torn down and rebuilt from the ground up, always in response to a perceived threat to the nation's very survival. Civic authority revives, cultural expression finds a community purpose, and people begin to locate themselves as members of a larger group. In every instance, fourth turnings have eventually become new founding moments in America's history, refreshing and redefining the national identity. Currently, this period began in 2008 with the global financial crisis and the deepening of the war on terror, and will extend to around 2030. If the past is any prelude to what is to come, as we consider the prior fourth turning, which was kicked off by the stock market crash of 1929 and climaxed with World War II. Just as a second turning reshapes our inner world, our values, culture, and religion, a fourth turning reshapes our outer world, politics, economy, and empire. To be clear, the road ahead for America will be rough, but it will take comfort in the idea that history cycles back, and that past offers us a guide to what we can expect in the future. Like nature's four seasons, the cycles of history follow a natural rhythm or pattern. That's what makes this book really interesting. Now, it's not a perfect science, because when they wrote the book, they were thinking that the fourth turning would start somewhere around the year 2000 or 2005, I believe. But obviously, it's not a perfect science. It doesn't necessarily last each turning 20 years specifically. It could be 25 years. Some could be less. Some could be more. It's an average of what has taken place in the past, because it's based on several different cycles, which we'll get into. So real quick, I'm just going to see what everybody has to say. And then I got some more information to share. This is not going to be a short video, but I'm not going to try to make it too long. But I want to try to make sure that I'm explaining things as best as possible. And again, make sure you guys are taking time to smash that like button. The Crypto Clan, Fourth Turning Connect. Bad Main Light, looks like a hard read. It's an interesting read, though. It's definitely worth the time. But it's not an entertaining book, but there's a lot of really valuable information. And the last chapter, kind of talking about what to expect, is really interesting. Definitely make sure you guys are hitting that like button. True Seeker 8886, and thank you, Rick Costa. Gold and silver is a must this time if you are a prepper. 100%. Now, talked about with central bank digital currencies, you may not even be able to buy precious metals. So I'm encouraging people to take advantage of those partnerships while they can. J Guns 26, good seeing you in the house. Dime Bar, always a pleasure. The fourth turning usually ends in war. If we start it in 2008, are we at the end of it? No, we're looking at roughly 2030 as being the end of it. So we'll continue on. Let me see what I have for clips real quick. This is a short one to give you an idea about how history repeats itself. And unfortunately, we don't really learn from our mistakes. And that's why history seems to repeat itself.
Well, what happens is finally you enter the fourth turning. And with this lack of direction, lack of regulation, lack of cohesion, everything runs aground eventually, right? You become very vulnerable to crisis. And everyone has forgotten the habits of what you do to actually counter a crisis. So this is the whole problem every time you go into a fourth turning, is that every generation at that time, by the time you're entering a new fourth turning, every generation who has had any adult experience handling a crisis is too old to serve.
People, we just tend to not learn from our mistakes, and that would be the best thing that we can do, is to learn from our mistakes. So in the middle of the book, we have an overview of the 7 cycles and generations and turnings, the Anglo-American saeculum. The saeculum is a seasonal cycle of history, roughly the length of a long human life, that explains the periodic recurrences of awakenings and crises throughout modernity. The Anglo-American saeculum dates back to the warning of the Middle Ages in the middle of the 15th century. There have been 7 saecula: the late medieval, the Reformation, New World, Revolutionary, Civil War, Great Power, and Millennial. Millennial started in 1946, and it's ongoing because we are in a fourth turning. America is, and at the time of this book, America is presently in the third turning of the millennial saeculum and giving birth to the 24th generation of the post-medieval era. Really exciting words. On each of the following 7-page pairs, the turnings are shown on the left and the generations on the right. Each generation is shown next to the turning in which it was born. The birth dates typically precede the turning dates by about 2 to 4 years. For any turning, the constellation of generations includes the children shown to its rights, plus 3 prior generations. And it gives a chart on it. Now, as I continue reading, roughly just by gauging from what I did with an average of the different saeculums, they average to be about 85 years. Turnings, this is about the turnings specifically, and then I'll explain generations. And then I will do a little bit of a screen share with some summary information. So a turning is a social mood that changes each time the generational archetypes enter a new constellation. Each turning is roughly the length of a phase of life. The first turning is a high. It's an upbeat era of strengthening institutions and weakening individualism when a new civic order implants and the old value regimen decays. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era of spiritual upheaval when the civic order comes under attack from a new values regimen. The third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era of strengthening individualism and weakening institutions when the old civic order decays and the new value regimens implants. The fourth turning is a crisis, a decisive era of secular upheaval when the value regimen propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. With generations, a generation is composed of people whose common location in history lends them a collective persona. The span of one generation is roughly the length of a phase of life. Generations come in 4 archetypes, always in the same order, whose phase of life positions comprise a constellation. We have prophet archetype. It's born in a high, enters young adulthood in an awakening, midlife in an unraveling, and elderhood in a crisis. Then we have a nomad archetype, which is born in an awakening and enters young adulthood in an unraveling, midlife in a crisis, a midlife crisis, and elderhood in the high. The hero archetype is born in an unraveling and enters young adulthood in a crisis, midlife in a high, and elderhood in an awakening. The artist archetype is born in a crisis and enters young adulthood in a high, midlife in an awakening, and elderhood in an unraveling. During a fourth turning, the constellation contains all 4 archetypes born in the current saeculum. During the first 3 turnings, the constellation includes 1 or more archetypes born in the prior saeculum. This is what I'm talking about, it not being exactly an entertaining read and it being a little dry. So I'm not going to be reading a whole lot direct from the book. It does give information again about the turnings and generations that coincide. And it goes into the 4th turning. And that'll be the last thing that I'm going to read from the book. And I'm going to do that here in just a little bit. But it's a prophecy, a 4th turning prophecy. This was some of the things that they had written as things that could occur based off their research and their studies during a 4th turning that was written in 1997, during which we were in a 3rd turning. So real quick, I'm going to do a quick we do have some positivity with this. Now, I keep talking about crisis. In order for us to rebuild, and I'm not talking about build back better, I'm talking about rebuild the world that's beneficial for we the people, we need to have a destruction of the old world. In order to rebuild or build, you have to get rid of what was prior. So there is some positivity when it really comes down to this. I don't want everybody to think of this as a completely negative thing. This came from a recent interview with Neil Howe, and they were talking about how looking at everything that's going on and thinking that we're in a 4th turning could leave some people in a really interesting predicament, thinking that everything is just going to break and we're just going to go in all out Mad Max chaos. So for those of you that aren't really sure, here's a little positive message about what comes out of a 4th turning.
And I think it's important to hear from experts like yourself. You're saying, we're going to have some challenges for sure, and it may be different. But right now, on average, it's not looking like, it's going to turn into the Lord of the Flies world.
No, and I think that is important. Look, the Lord of the Flies world is I mean, we have seen breaks in history where that has happened, but I absolutely don't think that's at all remotely the most likely scenario. I think you want to be aware of that, but I think most likely what's going to happen is going to be different, and you hope it's different in a positive way. And I think it's very often the hardest thing for people to do is to broaden their approach, right? Get out of today's ideological, narrow ideological frame and see it from a broader social and cultural point of view with a broader sense of history and say, you know, on balance, you can really see some positives coming out of here, right? And even positives about where we are today. The seasons are an interesting way of looking at history. Every season is necessary. It isn't like there's some seasons that are just decline. No, some things are getting worse, some things are getting better. It's the balance between them. Every season is necessary. And frankly, even the fourth turning, when a lot of old institutions are destroyed, that's necessary to rejuvenate us, right? To rejuvenate our institutions, to make them young again so they're able to grow again, right? You need to do occasionally some creative destruction, not just in the private sector, right? But in our public life, and start over again and do something new, something big. I think that's one thing that younger generations really miss. Thinking big about our future again. Why can't we do that?
We definitely need to start thinking big about our futures individually. Things start with thoughts, and then we speak those thoughts into existence, and we manifest those things. So we have power in thoughts and words. And there is a lot of positivity that comes out of this. Now, before I get into the summary and share a little bit of this information about the prophecy, I'm going to see what everybody has to say in the live chat, which I do appreciate each and every one of you taking time to join me on today's live stream. Because again, time is our most valuable asset, and I appreciate you spending it with me today. See where I left off with the chat, and we'll continue going on. QM says, I did get my message. Hey, did my message not work or get deleted? Don't want to repost if it's not wanted in the chat. Not really sure what the message was. Depending on what you said, YouTube may have deleted it, but I don't think anybody's removing any comments. So we'll figure that out. Added it to my ebook download list. Thanks, Rice. No problem, my friend. Again, it's not an easy read, but I would encourage you, if you smoke, if you're a 420 enthusiast, light you up a fatty and read on. It's very interesting. Yeah, Cliff High has talked about the fourth turning, and also what's interesting about the fourth turning is it coincides with a lot of other things outside of this. We had, trying to pull up some information as I'm talking. We had something astrologically happen last year, which was the Pluto return. It happened on February 22nd, 2022. 2222. And it actually took us back to the astrological point of where we were during the revolutionary time period, which really fits up, scarily, perfectly with the fourth turning. So I don't have this prepared as a link shared in the live chat, or excuse me, in the video description. This comes from the New York Post. It's just the first article I saw about it that looked like it had relevancy. What is a Pluto return, and what does it mean astrologically? It's very interesting. It kind of goes into some information about what's happened with the Roman Empire, the British Empire, and what we can expect. This probably wasn't the best article. Bear with me just a moment. See what we had on the other choices. Usually the astrological websites will have a little bit better information since it's being more specific. Let me see what this thing is saying. It's interesting, when we talk about what happens in the stars, as above, so below, because there's a lot of parallels when it comes to things like that. So this is an astro style website. The USA Pluto return is here, what it means for you. Talking about the alignment. Talking about different events that are taking place. Neptune and Pluto, planets of war. Yeah, I'm not seeing the exact information that I was looking for specifically. I've shared it in previous videos, but long story short is basically we have returned astrologically to the point that we were in during the revolutionary time period. And the previous time periods that we had a Pluto return to that astrological sign, and I'm not an astrologist, so please forgive me, there has been issues that are very, very parallel. So, and it correlates when you look at what's happening with the fourth turning. It correlates with a lot of things that are going on. It's really crazy how history repeats itself and there really is nothing new under the sun. Now, it's always good to see you in the house. Truth Seeker. He was born in 46. You lived through all four as described. Interesting. So that would, I'd have to go back and look at the book, but if you would have been born during the high. So you would have been born. Yeah, that's really interesting that you got. So we are in a fourth turning. I was trying to see what everybody had to say in the comments. Gulag, thanks for joining, my friend. One of the lifetime members of my fundraiser that I'm doing on my private website. There's information scrolling across the bottom of the screen if you guys want to get access to my private website and want to join the fundraiser and take advantage and get some of this swag. Frogsy is saying none of this makes any sense if our world is programmed. Television, media, Mockingbird. I can't say the world is programmed, or even if it is programmed, why can't things happen in cycles? You look at trading cryptocurrency and you can actually take fractals and see how things are fractals. You can use a Fibonacci retracement tool and actually gauge what takes place. It's crazy how cyclical and rhythmic things are, and there's nothing new under the sun. We don't even have any real food in the stores anymore. True. With that being said, I'll have a little bit of information scrolling across the bottom of the screen about my partnership with My Patriot Supply. You guys can check out prepwithrice.com and take advantage. Get some stock up on some non-perishable food. And every month they change up their offers. But you got to visit prepwithrice.com. It supports my channels. And you can take advantage of these special deals and discounts. This month, there's a 3-month emergency food kit that includes over 2,000 calories a day, 21 varieties, up to 25-year shelf life. You're also going to get sealed in 6 rugged water-resistant buckets. It ships fast with free shipping, and it's discreet shipping. This also includes a free water filter system, an Alexa Pro water filtration system. Altogether, all of that is worth roughly $1,100, and it's up roughly $800 today with this deal, and the deals change every month. So you can take advantage of the 3-month emergency food kit and the Alexa Pro water filtration system, all for $797. And the second offer that's going on is a 2-week food supply, emergency food supply, for $127. You got to visit prepwithrice.com in order to take advantage, and it'd be greatly appreciated, and it's a way that you guys can support the channel. Finish going through the comments, and then we'll continue on with today's video. All wars since the French Revolution have been created by merchant bankers. I would agree with most of that. Definitely keep it simple. Community is key. Daddy-o, lots of crickets. Talking about food. Eat the bugs. I was trying to read what this is actually saying, but I'm not really quite understanding this. But thank you for joining in. Miranda26 writes. Again, I appreciate everybody for taking the time to tune in. Creative community. I love this topic. Thank you, my friend. Hey, y'all, number 42 like. Please smash that like button if you guys have not already. Bitbird, what's up? It's always good to see everybody in the house. Trying my best to make this topic as entertaining as possible, as educational as possible for the dryness of the actual topic. There's a reason why a lot of wealthy people, a lot of people in the macro financial spectrum that are content creators, that run hedge funds, that are bankers, that work in traditional finance, that are in the cryptocurrency space, people are paying attention to what the fourth turning is saying. That's why when you look up Neil Howe and you look up the fourth turning and you look at the people who he's interviewed with, I'm trying to get an interview with him. I'm trying my best, but he's interviewing with some really, really high level people. The Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the fourth turning all happening simultaneously. What a time to be alive. And Daddy O says, learn life skills today. When these banks all go, commerce comes to a halt. Get local. Act and think local. I talk about that in other videos. Speaking of that, man, if you guys haven't, a lot of my videos have not been watched by many of my subscribers. And what I would really encourage you guys to do is head over to Rice TBX after you're done with this video. If you missed the video I did this past Friday, I believe, about central bank digital currencies, I did a video talking about Gary Gensler and his hearing that he had to do with Senate. And there was an interview that I did last Monday with Tone Vase. I also put out a video yesterday, I believe. Was it yesterday? It was this past Monday I put this out. And this was my speech that I gave at Crypto Mindset Reset 2, when enough people take a stand. I encourage, this only had 221 views. Please check this video out. The message in this video is extremely important. I share a lot of new solutions to old problems of things that we're dealing with. So I would definitely encourage you to take time to make sure you're checking that out. All right, let me go ahead real quick and finish up the comments, and then we'll finish up with what's on today's video. I would agree. Bill Noble, was he talking about the fourth turning crypto clan? And I love the Wu-Tang logo, by the way. I'm a huge Wu-Tang fan. Feed the animals. It's good seeing you. Last time was the French Revolution and the American Revolution. History doesn't repeat. History is repeated. It's definitely cyclical. When I say repeat too, it doesn't exactly repeat 100%, things for exactly, but you will see the parallels when you start doing the sociological studies. When you read this book, you'll see the parallels that I'm talking about. Manel, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think there was another super chat. Manel, again, thank you. Appreciate all your support. Frogsy was saying modern banking today hails from the 15th century northern Italy, also where the mafia comes, also where the organized religion system hails, also where the world's current calendar comes from. Man, you figured out a lot of cool things here. Just like this thing, let's blow this stream up for Rice. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I greatly appreciate. The channel is definitely shadow banned, both of my channels, so all support, all likes, all comments, all shares are greatly appreciated. Crazers, bikers, appreciate you guys tuning in. Everybody, definitely look out to yourself so you can look out for others. All right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share the prophecy from the book. So again, this was written in 1997. This is chapter 10. Sometime around the year 2005, perhaps a few years before or after, America will enter the fourth turning. In the middle OOs, America will be a very different society than in the late 1920s when the last crisis catalyzed. The nation will be more affluent, enjoy better health, possess more technology, encompass a larger and more diverse population, and command more powerful weapons. But the same could be said about every other unraveling era society compared to its predecessor. They are not exempt from the saeculum, nor will we be. A spark will ignite a new mood. Today, the same spark would flame briefly, but then extinguish. Its last flicker merely confirming and deepening the unraveling era mindset. This time, though, it will catalyze a crisis. In retrospect, the spark might seem as ominous as the financial crash, as ordinary as the national election, or as trivial as the Tea Party. It could be a rapid succession of small events in which the ominous, the ordinary, and the trivial are commingled. Recall that a crisis catalyst involves scenarios distinctly imaginable 8 or 10 years in advance. Based on recent unraveling trends, the following circa 2005 scenarios might seem plausible. And again, this was written in 1997. If you're enjoying this video, what you should be doing is taking an opportunity to do a thumbs up. It'd be greatly appreciated. And also sign up for my mailing list at ricetvx.com so you can stay updated on all things Rice. I'm going to start my mailing list back up beginning of next month. So make sure you're signed up so you can receive emails to be notified as to what is happening with all things Rice, Rice TVX, Rice Against the Grain. So these are some of the things that they predict that could take place based off their research written in 1997. Beset by a financial crisis, a state laid, and again, they were foreseeing what was happening. Beset by a financial crisis, a state lays claim to its residents' federal tax monies, declaring this as an act of secession. The president obtains a federal injunction. The governor refuses to back down. Federal marshals enforce the court order. Similar tax rebellions spring up in other states. Treasury bill auctions are suspended. Militia violence breaks out. Cyber terrorists destroy the IRS databases. U.S. special forces are put on alert. Demand issue for a new constitutional convention. The next one is a global terrorist group blows up an aircraft and announces it possesses portable nuclear weapons. The United States and its allies launch a preemptive strike. The terrorists threaten to retaliate against an American city. Congress declares war and authorizes unlimited house-to-house searches. Opponents charge that the president concocted the emergency for political purposes. A nationwide strike is declared. Foreign capital flees the U.S. The next, an impasse over the federal budget reaches a stalemate. The president and Congress both refuse to back down, triggering a near total government shutdown. The president declares emergency powers. Congress rescinds his authority. Dollar and bond prices plummet. The president threatens to stop Social Security checks. Congress refuses to raise the debt ceiling. Default looms. Wall Street panics. The next, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced the spread of a new communal virus. The disease reaches densely populated areas, killing some. Congress enacts mandatory quarantine measures. The president orders the National Guard to throw prophylactic cordons around unsafe neighborhoods. Mayors resist. Urban gangs battle suburban militias. Calls mount for the president to declare martial law. The next and last one is growing anarchy throughout the former Soviet republics prompts Russia to conduct training exercises around its borders. Lithuania erupts in civil war. Negotiations break down. U.S. diplomats are captured and publicly taunted. The president airlifts troops to rescue them and orders ships into the Black Sea. Iran declares its alliance with Russia. Gold and oil prices soar. Congress debates restoring the draft. And it reads, it's highly unlikely that any of these scenarios will actually happen. What is likely, however, is that the catalyst will unfold according to a basic crisis dynamic that underlies all of these scenarios. An initial spark will trigger a chain reaction of unyielding responses and further emergencies. The core elements of these scenarios, debt, civic decay, global disorder, will matter more than the details, which the catalyst will juxtapose and connect in some unknowable way. If foreign societies are also entering a fourth turning, this could accelerate the chain reaction. So again, like I said, reading the book isn't exactly the easiest experience. I will say that the 10th chapter, being that it's more of kind of a thought process, predictions based off of what they've written about, it's a little bit more easier to read that part as well. So I would definitely encourage you, regardless, you need to spend time educating yourself, put time into yourself, because again, You are your most valuable asset in addition to your time. And the most important thing that you can do is invest in yourself and educate yourself. And sometimes that means reading books that are academic and aren't exactly exciting. That's how you learn new information, is challenging yourself to do things that you're not comfortable with. So do something uncomfortable and read a book. And maybe that book could be The Fourth Turning, because there's a lot of really good information in this book. All right, so I got one more thing I want to share, and then I think we're going to look at the comments and wrap things up. Again, thank you so much for joining me on today's video. I greatly appreciate. And again, this is linked down below. This is well written, because I was looking for some information that had some summaries, because I was trying to figure out, how do I summarize this information? Because I don't fully 100% understand all of it. But with that being said, this website really gave a lot of insight. I read this at the beginning of the book in a nutshell. In The Fourth Turning, Neil Howe and William Strauss argue that history follows a clear and predictable cycle, that each cycle lasts around a lifetime and consists of 4 seasons or turnings, each marked by a profound shift in the national mood and culture. This life cycle of 4 seasons is made inevitable by 4 generational archetypes in their order, which they argue has recurred throughout modernity. The book was written in 1997, at which some point the authors suggested we were approaching the 4th turning, which is a life-changing period of crisis that marks every saeculum. The book summary, the key ideas: the saeculum, the last 500 years, will be viewed through the lens of cycles, with each cycle lasting 80 to 100 years, and each cycle containing 4 turnings that typically last 20 to 25 years. Each of these turnings brings with it a different mood and culture, and a different relationship with institutions. A generational archetypes. The saeculum has 4 recurring generational archetypes, which we've explained. The 4 turnings, each cycle starts with a post-high crisis, or post-high, which is the first turning, which is defined by a renewal of community life, general periods of stability, and an appreciation for things that were lost during a preceding crisis. An awakening, a second turning period, then follows, where the mood shifts to defiance and spiritual discovery. This is followed by an unraveling, the third turning, where people become ever more distant from one another and more individualistic. Finally, a crisis, the 4th turning, takes hold, where a great threat to livelihoods and lives drives a surge from individualism to civic duty. Preparing for a 4th turning by understanding cyclicality. That is not the easiest word for me to pronounce, but I did it perfectly. We can prepare for major crisis. Most importantly, during an unraveling period, we should shift our approach towards building a strong foundation in our communities and diversifying our skills and incomes and readiness. The key ideas in the books talks about the saeculum. It's cyclical, and our education system has disregarded this reality in favor of linear time. This focus on linearity has consequences not only for our anticipation of events, but from our experiences of society and lives. It explains what the 4 different turnings are, which I've explained several times. The book was written in 1997. Sometime before the year 2025, and this is again back in 97, America will pass to a great gate in history. Commiserate with the American Revolution, Civil War, and twin emergencies of the Great Depression and World War II. Every 4th turning has registered an upward ratchet in the technology of destruction and in mankind's willingness to use it. This time, America will enter a 4th turning with the means to inflict unimaginable horrors, and perhaps will confront adversaries who possess the same. We have information about the generational archetypes, the generational information, the 4 turnings, a little bit more detailed information. So if you guys really want to get more information and do a deeper dive, all of this is linked down below in the video description. A few other things that I have in the video description, and this comes from lifecourse.com. There's a complete course dealing with the 4th turning if you guys want to check this out. I'm not sure if they charge for this, but I believe it's free. This is the turnings in the Anglo-American history, the 4 turnings, the different saeculums. So when we look at the New World, These are what took place during the first, second, third, and fourth turning. The most recent saeculum that we had, the Great Power, started 1865 and ended 1946 with the Great Depression and World War II. You can see every fourth turning right here. We've experienced the War of the Roses, the Armada Crisis, the Glorious Revolution, the American Revolution, Civil War, Great Depression, and World War II. And what is the current fourth turning, the millennial fourth turning in the millennial saeculum going to bring us? There's also some information in regards to the generations and different representations of the generations and eras. So when we think about the American Revolution, the Republican generation, we have Thomas Jefferson. In the era of good feelings, compromise, we have Andrew Jackson. In the transcendental generation, during the time of the Civil War, we have Abraham Lincoln. Well, the transcendental awakening. And then during the Civil War, we had Ulysses Grant. With the GI generation, we had John Kennedy and Katharine Hepburn. That was the Depression and World War II. The silent generation, we have Martin Luther King Jr., Sandra Day O'Connor. The boom generation includes your George W. Bush and your Hillary Clintons, your Generation X, which is the generation that I'm a part of. Barack Obama and Sarah Palin, millennials, Mark Zuckerberg, and Anne Hathaway. I'm not sure why they chose these individuals that they chose. But there is a life course method introduction if you're interested in taking this course yourself. And again, it will be linked down below in that video description. I do have one more video that I wanted to share, and I need to make sure I get this link down below. I wanted to share the channel because it only has 29 subscribers. This video only has 314 views, and it was put up a month ago. And the guy spent a lot of time doing this video as a really good summary, a 4-minute summary, literally. The channel is Mark Carnevale. We'll put a link. You go ahead and copy this. I'll throw this into the live chat. After I share this video, I'll come back to the live chat, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's video. If you are enjoying this, if you learned something new, if you're finding value in this content, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe here at Rice TVX and Rice Against the Grain. It would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to go ahead and take this thing full screen. I want to mute myself and let this play. So let me go ahead and get this bad boy going. I want to go full screen. You should be able to hear, actually. Bear with me a moment. I want to make sure I had the share audio selected, which I do now. There we go. I'm going to play a second. Let me know if you can hear it.
Summarizing the Fourth Turning, which is a book written in the mid-90s by...
Let me know if you guys can hear that real quick, and then we will continue on. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, Mr. David. Appreciate you, my friend. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to play it. I think everybody can hear it. So here we go.
Everybody, I'll be summarizing The Fourth Turning, which is a book written in the mid-90s by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It explores the generational cycles in American history via its controversial yet plausible ideas. Their theory, popularly known as Strauss-Howe generational theory, proposes that historical events shape generations, and that those generations subsequently shape historical events. The authors use a metaphor of the seasons to describe the cyclical pattern of history, with each turning representing a different season. This interplay between history and generations could be one reason why we so often note that history repeats itself. Or, more accurately, not so much a repetition, but more so a rhyme. These rhymes typically occur in 80 to 100-year cycles, and one obvious example are the major wars that have marked the history of this country. The American Revolution in the 1770s, Civil War 90 years later, and World War II 80 years after that. This book has risen in the public consciousness as we find ourselves in that 80 to 100 year zone after the last major crisis. People inherently seek knowledge about the future and use models like this to find meaning. The fundamental components of Gen theory are seasons and generational archetypes. Let's talk about seasons first. Within these 80 to 100 year cycles, which are not coincidentally a healthy human lifespan, there are 4 seasons, each with the length of a 20-year generation. Keep in mind that the authors are boomers and that these titles are overly dramatic. Let's look at each of these seasons in the context of recent history. The last spring, or high, occurred immediately after World War II and featured the baby boom, which is where boomers got their name. Movies like Grease or TV shows like Leave It to Beaver or Happy Days are vivid depictions of the social conformity, innocent culture, and strong family bonds that typified the era. In The Awakening, we saw the coming-of-age boomers rebel against that conformity by engaging in counterculture and social activism. Each generation reacts to the social norms and expectations of the previous era, and therefore a tiring of social discipline would be a logical response. Civil rights, women's rights, and the sexual revolution were all major movements within this period. Millennials are born, Gen Xers are coming of age, and cultural movements such as hip-hop and grunge characterize society's total shift to individualism within the unraveling, or the third turning. With individualism comes the increasing cultural polarity, red versus blue states, rich versus poor, and recalls the previous unraveling during the Roaring '20s. Winter is a time of crisis, when society is challenged by problems that cannot be easily solved. Deepening division and conflict, institutional decay that consistently leads into a major crisis, often in the form of war, and forces a society to either confront or dismiss those problems in order to unify against an existential threat. While this is a time of great uncertainty, it's also a time of incredible opportunity, as the rigid culture of the past 80 plus years will give way to a new springtime of renewal ahead. Let's quickly talk about the 4 generational archetypes: prophet, nomad, hero, and artist. These also repeat and align with the seasons. The most recent example of the prophet generation are the boomers. They're characterized by indulged post-war childhoods, activists for social change, idealistic, passionate, and charismatic leaders, and they inspire others to pursue a higher purpose. Gen Xers, on the other hand, are neglected and are resilient during childhood. They're skeptical of authority and institutions, and are innovators who challenge established norms. They're comfortable with uncertainty and change. Millennials are optimistic and confident, focused on achievement, competition, and desire to make a positive impact. Heroic figures in times of war and unrest, and are natural leaders with a strong sense of responsibility. Finally, artists, raised by Gen Xers with a sense of individualism, creativity, and social idealism. They have a strong sense of identity and desire for authenticity, and often create new cultural expressions that reflect changing values and beliefs of society. And that's my presentation on the 4th turning. Check it out.
Check it out. Check it out. Make sure you guys do check it out. I will, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to throw it in the video description real quick. It's pretty fly for a white guy doing stuff on the fly live.
Hey guys, look,
All right. Let me update the video description. Make sure I save this information. It's there. And it's in the live chat as well. We're going to finish up going through the comments. Again, thank you for taking the time to join today. If you guys are into the legal fiction stuff that I cover, I put out some videos that I consider to be some fire. If you want to understand my thoughts based off of my years of research and interviews that I've done in the legal fiction space, I have a live stream that I did this past Saturday and Monday over on Rice Against the Grain, entitled "You Can't Handle My Truth About the Legal Fiction," part 1 and part 2. I think both parts total up to about 5 hours. It's worth the time. I cover a lot of information. I get everything off my chest. I talk about all the people I endorse, who I do not endorse, and why. I go through all the people I've interviewed, people I haven't interviewed that I endorse, and explain the different types of people that are interested in legal fiction, the different types of teachers that are interested in the legal, that are teaching the legal fiction, the gurus, the so-called gurus, and talk about what I'm going to be doing on my journey with the legal fiction. So if you're not subscribed over at Rice Against the Grain, I ask, what are you waiting for? Proof of Work is saying, did you also read Sovereign Individual, or was that an excerpt from that book? If not, that book is also from 1997 and predicts Bitcoin among others. Interesting. I'm not familiar with the book, but we did have in the 90s, we had electronic cash. We had David Chaum, Chaum. He is considered the godfather of cryptography, and he had created DigiCash, I believe, or eCash. It was one of the two was the name. So the concept of cryptographers working on creating a cryptocurrency has been ongoing. David Chaum wrote a dissertation paper back in 1983 that proposed all but one idea of all of what the Bitcoin blockchain is made up of. So, and that was even before the internet was really a thing. So there's been a plethora and a community of cyberpunks that use cryptography and build cryptocurrencies. So kind of foreseeing that wasn't an impossibility. Plus, there's been a lot of predictions about electronic money and going cashless. I will say I've spent a lot of time reading, researching. However, I still have this feeling I need to do something. Knowledge is power, but useless if not applied to anything. 100%. And that's, I think this knowledge you can apply to life. Having a full understanding of what you're dealing with gives you a comprehension of how to move forward and how to interact. Faith without works is dead. I agree. Heavily invest in brass and lead. I would say copper, which you can also get at Money Metals Exchange. Web3 me, rice is a deep secret. There is no answer, though. No answer to what? Some things don't have answers. Most things do. Thank you, my friend. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. This is a mutual effort. I can't be doing this without you guys. If nobody watches my videos, there's no point in me doing this, which is why I'm trying to remind people about the content that I've been putting out in case you haven't been notified or haven't had a chance to watch those videos. I greatly appreciate for those of you that can and want to catch up on the content on both of my channels. Where's Chat GPT sitting shift at? I'm not really sure what that means, Edward, but I think that ultimately AI is going to be playing a big part in the crisis that we're going to be dealing with. Thank you, Crypto Clan. B-Chad, I feel the end of the dollar as world reserve currency is part of the crisis, and crypto is the crisis resolution to fully enter a more fair, decentralized digital age. Well said. Frogsy, blockchain is not a term that communicates a fair, decentralized world, in my opinion, but has sold to the masses via the slogan. I get what some people say about the word chain, but it's a chain of blocks. It's the best way to describe what a blockchain is. The other terminology they use is distributed ledger technology. So you can use DLT, distributed ledger technology. Mr. X, good seeing you in the house, my friend. Frogsy, I see where you're coming from, but it's not anything to do with blocking or being chained. It's just a description of the way the tech works. Thanks, QM. Appreciate it. We're in this together, fam. Got the popcorn, Justin. Bitcoin had predecessors. The book also predicts a whole lot more, though, like the fall of the national states and rise of a global cyber economy and hence sovereign individuals. Proof of work, if you can. Let me get this up on screen and not scrolling. I have a fundraiser that I'm doing. You guys can participate. I will promote this before I wrap up today's video, and you'll also see my email address here. That's why I wanted to share this. So that's one of the reasons why. Rice Media Group at protonmail.com. If you could send me an email with that information of that book and what you said in this chat, I'd greatly appreciate you taking the time to do that. It would be a great reminder for me. Also, if you want to get lifetime access to my private website that I'm doing a fundraiser. There's going to be 50 people getting lifetime access and a special swag bag gift that I'm putting together, all for $100. You can email me at ricemediagroup@protonmail.com. I'm working on having the site up as soon as possible. I had a developer that was going to be working on it, and the time that he's going to take doing it is a lot longer than I wanted. So I'm looking for other developers. I'm trying to get this thing rolling, a redesign of ricetvx.com and a place for my videos and a place for the community to communicate. So with the special swag bag, I've got stickers, I've got pins, I've got some other promotional items, and I've got these really cool patches. They have Velcro backing. The Rice TVX patch, the blue in this glows in the dark. You can see it's textured, it's PVC. It's got the Velcro back, so you can stick it to hats, backpacks, bulletproof vest, anything that you have that's got Velcro on it, or you want to add some Velcro, you can stick it. And then we have the Rice Against the Grain. I love both of these. They're right around 2x2. The Rice TVX is a little bit shorter, but it's a little bit wider. But they're right around 2x2 size. The blue glows in the dark, and it's pretty intense as far as the glowing action. So there are, I believe, 5 or 6 spots left out of the 50. So if you want to get lifetime access, email me at ricemediagroup@protonmail.com. If you've already emailed me and I've sent you instructions on how to pay, you may want to pay because, again, there's not many spots left. I have a very limited edition run on the swag. So consider that. If you want to join or you want to send me some information, Rice Media Group at protonmail.com. If you're talking about the website and fundraiser, put lifetime in a subject line. Otherwise, put in the subject line what's appropriate to what you want to share with me via the email. So thanks again for taking the time to tune in for today's live stream. And I appreciate everybody for taking the time to chat in the building. So remember the lesson that we do not learn from the fourth turning.
Well, what happens is finally you enter the fourth turning, and with this lack of direction, lack of regulation, lack of cohesion, everything runs aground eventually, right? You become very vulnerable to crisis. And everyone has forgotten the habits of what you do to actually counter a crisis. So this is a whole problem every time you go into a fourth turning, is that every generation at that time, by the time you're entering a new fourth turning, every generation who has had any adult experience handling a crisis is too old to serve.
Thank you for tuning in for today's video. If you haven't smashed that like button, I definitely encourage you to do so. Make sure you're subscribed here at Rice TVX and Rice Against the Grain. I'm going to leave you with this, a little positive message, as I like to always leave you with, and that is I encourage you to be a blessing to others. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the glitch that you want to see in the matrix. Be the change that you want to see in the world. And remember, positivity, because good will come out of the fourth turning. And until next time, practice change.
And I think it's important to hear from experts like yourself. You're saying, we're going to have some challenges for sure, and it may be different. But right now, on average, it's not looking like, it's going to turn into the Lord of the Flies world.
No, and I think that is important. Look, the Lord of the Flies world is, I mean, we have seen breaks in history where that has happened, but I absolutely don't think that's at all remotely the most likely scenario. I think you want to be aware of that, but I think most likely what's going to happen is going to be different, and you hope it's different in a positive way. And I think it's very often the hardest thing for people to do is to broaden their approach, right? Get out of today's ideological, narrow ideological frame and see it from a broader social and cultural point of view with a broader sense of history and say, on balance, you can really see some positives coming out of here, right? And even positives about where we are today. The seasons are an interesting way of looking at history. Every season is necessary. It isn't like there's some seasons that are just decline. No, some things are getting worse. Some things are getting better. It's the balance between them. Every season is necessary. And frankly, even the fourth turning, when a lot of old institutions are destroyed, that's necessary to rejuvenate us, right? To rejuvenate our institutions, to make them young again so they're able to grow again, right? You need to do occasionally some creative destruction, not just in the private sector, right? But in our public life. and start over again and do something new, something big. I think that's one thing that younger generations really miss. Thinking big about our future again. Why can't we do that?